Well, it is top of the hour, or really half the hour there. We're going to go ahead and just kick this and get this started. Thank you for joining us today in our discussion, State of the Security with Mimecast. I am Terry Straube, Senior Manager for Cox Business Cloud Solutions. And joining me is Tom Bailey, Mimecast Head of Product Marketing. Mimecast is a trusted partner that has built their business specifically around email resiliency and security. I'm really excited to welcome Tom, but before we get too far, just a few of those webinar reminders. This session is being recorded and will be shared following today's session with you. And if you have any questions as we go through this presentation, please chat them over in the Q&A panel and we'll get to them afterwards. So we'll just jump right in. And Tom, hey, thanks so much for joining us today on behalf of Cox Business customers, as well as myself and peers. We're really excited for you to jump in and share with us on this report that Mimecast releases every year and the research that goes into it.
Yeah, Terry, thank you. Look, this is a pleasure to be here. I'm always excited to talk to people about cybersecurity generally, but obviously from an email security perspective. I've had the pleasure of being on, I think, a couple of Cox-related events, so I'm looking forward to some of the questions. As Terry indicated, as they come in, please write them down or jot them into the chat session. We'll be happy to address them. So yeah, this is about every year for the last 5, we've been doing what's known as the State of Email Security Report. And we do leverage some of our existing customer base, but for the most part, we try and go well beyond the folds of our install base and really get to people in remote portions, not only of industry, but also of the world, right? Because at a regional level, you end up seeing cybersecurity concerns that are responding to the theater in which the adversary is participating. Now, it is true we're in a global environment, but nonetheless, we, as a rule, see a variety of cybersecurity malicious campaigns that pop up in different parts of the world, sometimes completely unrelated, and then you see them rolling across almost in a follow the sun model. So as a result, we're able to get all this rich data as part of our survey. And the findings we obviously are keen to talk about. It includes a bunch of anecdotal as well as hard facts in regards to the survey itself. Some of that manifests in, and let me move to the next slide, some of that, of course, manifests in all sorts of really cool infographics sort of things. So we get plenty of our readership on this report fixate on the stats, and there's plenty of stats there, and we'll be delighted to show these to you, or you'll become available to you at the close of this webinar. The stats are great, but in many instances, you end up, we as an industry, cybersecurity, we tend to lead with a lot of stats. And so as a result, audiences have become sort of hardened or worse, jaded towards some of the stats. The stats we leverage in order to help us in the dialogue about key trends that we're seeing. So if I can, let's talk a little bit about COVID. And I know people don't love to talk about COVID anymore, and it feels like we're so beyond the pandemic and a sustained work from home imperative. But what happened, obviously, is that the cybersecurity as well as the cyber adversary landscape has fundamentally changed. Now, Terry, I know you had some thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I know. I mean, over the past year and a half, it's been staggering. You can't avoid news or turn on the TV, and there's always something going on in regards to ransomware or data being held hostage. And, even from myself or end users that have worked from home, I've specifically seen emails that have been centered around COVID-19 resources, click here, open this attachment, and, at that time, I know we're not as savvy about some of these attacks. So what other examples have you witnessed, and especially around COVID-19?
Yeah, no, it's, again, like I said, fundamentally, the landscape for those of us in defense, right, cybersecurity defense, and the landscape for the adversaries have changed dramatically, in large part leveraging some very old techniques suddenly popped up again. So for example, when the lockdown was first going into place, and this seems like ancient history, in fact, it was only, 18 months ago, but when the lockdowns first started to move into place, many started to receive SMS messages regarding school closures, or it could have been around, mask mandates or what have you. We began to see a rise, an uptick in a number of malicious SMS. So oftentimes in the industry, this is referred to as smishing. Different than phishing, but it is an SMS phish. Usually those are designed in order to do some sort of a credential harvesting or credential theft. So it's a link, you click on the link, yes, tell me more about, my school, my children's school is being closed, right? And you end up handing over your login and password. Relatively rudimentary attacks in times of crisis become much more successful. And that's a great deal of what we saw. The other one, of course, during the early days, it was March of 2020 last year as an industry and globally, IT ops as well as security operatives were suddenly panicked about a work from home imperative. In many cases, with individuals or employees who had never worked from home in their career. So there's obviously this huge capital expense that they needed to make in order to buy monitors and mice and keyboards and computers for their home users. But at the same time, it introduced a whole new raft of problems for IT operations and for security operations that they've never had to deal with before. For example, the home Wi-Fi. Is there a VPN? Is it secure? How many devices have they moved their laptop instance to an iPad because it's more convenient from the couch? And if that iPad gets left on the coffee table, and a child picks it up, is it secure? So many things that IT ops and security operatives hadn't really had to think about before in a meaningful way suddenly became front and center. In addition, and this is one that we're starting to see a rise in across the board, is the usage of all of the productivity apps. So the notion of shadow IT is something that existed before COVID-19 and the sustained work from home imperative. Usually it was predicated upon IT operation people who, in an effort to get their job done faster, they go ahead and, for example, stand up an instance on Amazon that has not been secured by the company, but it provides them a temporary place to get their work done faster. So that's classic shadow IT. What we ended up seeing was shadow end users that were beginning to leverage not only the corporate email that sits from the comfort of their home or the prison of their home, depending on how you viewed lockdown. But they started to leverage and install other tools, not with a malicious intent, right? So you end up seeing rise in messaging apps. You ended up seeing rises across the board in collaboration platforms. So, we're coming to you today, obviously, from WebEx. WebEx is an established vendor, obviously, in this space, but we saw new vendors arise, right? Zoom suddenly gravitated to the top in many instances for many organizations. But you also had the rise of Teams, of Slack, of Jabber, collaboration and messaging apps or tools that perhaps had not been in usage at a company before. The world as a whole, even prior to 2019, was moving towards cloud, was moving towards SaaS-based delivery. COVID-19 ended up being in the lockdown, the subsequent lockdown and a work from home imperative basically accelerated all of it. So as an industry on the cyber side, we are concerned about, obviously, as some shadow IT or shadow end user concerns, but also now the proliferation of additional attack vectors by virtue of these additional tools.
So what are your thoughts? What are we doing providing additional protection? What are we doing on these emerging tools?
So when it comes to the emerging tools, I mean, you want to look for vendors that obviously have, and this is a bit of a shameless plug for Mimecast, but obviously we handle email messaging and we know messaging and how messaging is used in organizations and how to ensure that it's secure. For an email, we can do interrogation. We make certain that the links or attachments or the end user that is claiming to be is truly that end user. That is a natural extension for us into things like messaging. And so as a company, we're doing that. So as a catalyst, it ends up being the silver lining on things like COVID-19, and suddenly an escalation in attacks means that there is a corresponding response. That corresponding response is you're starting to see cyber across the board begin to embrace, recognize the value of these additional platforms and tools, and start coming to solutions in order to protect, but at the same time restore in the event. Because at the end of the day, for many, many organizations, it's not a question of if you're going to get ransomware, if you'll have a breach. It's a question of when. And so being able to quickly restore on that becomes important.
Yeah, and I feel bad. I can't imagine being that IT director, that being responsible for that level of security with so many different end users and then deploying so fast into the home. It's a tough combination. And, how much do you think the success rate of these attackers and, is really about the employees' lack of awareness around the danger? And what do you think we can do, as employers? How do you think we can strengthen that end user?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. The industry as a whole has embraced the notion of security awareness training. Enablement of end users by IT has always been a bit of a challenge, in large part because, look, we have day jobs, and we want to get on with that day job. We want to engage with our colleagues and our peers or our customers or what have you, to spend time doing training, which has traditionally been relatively boring and long, has proven to be largely ineffectual. So the security awareness training across the board for cybersecurity has moved obviously to a combination of phishing simulation, where we attempt to fool end users, and then on the back of that with very short micro learning focused on very, very specific use cases. So the question of should the onus of an organization's cybersecurity strategy rest with the end user? The answer is no. However, end users do provide that very first line of defense. So as a result, cybersecurity is obviously focused in on how it is that we can bolster and strengthen the end user such that they can help reduce the overall attack surface of the organization. And that sounds kind of pie in the sky, sort of idealistic, but we actually do see that working. We do see end users readily engaging with emails, reporting emails as potentially dangerous, being able to then filter that email through either automation or eventually human eyes to verify whether or not it's suspicious. They really are, it's the old adage of see something, say something. So yeah, it has its own risk, but.
I would agree with you. It's altered my behavior. And I think those are a lot of the things that we're hearing. When I'm out in front of customers with Mimecast demos, they love the portal. They love the ease of use, the data analytics, to be able to see the phishing and who's clicking, who's not. But also what's great about it is they use humor. I mean, a 2-minute humor video based off security topics that have like human error versus sound judgment is freaking hilarious. I actually look forward to watching them. They're like a little bit of a break during the day. And it's funny because they're really relevant topics. Like, and you don't know that it's altering behavior because sometimes you can't quantify that, right? I mean, less attacks, less chance. But even today, I closed down all of my desktop, before going on a public, Zoom call, just because of that, because of that, at least, that previous training. Or as I'm looking for phishing, I'm now reading, if I don't identify it quickly, I'm reading through it to find those, Microsoft that's not spelled correctly or something else, to really help, and then know where to send it. I can identify this to send it up to my IT department quickly. And so I think it's having a huge impact because I'm an end user on that. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, good. Yeah, well, I will pass. So, of course, Terry, you're referring to Mimecast security awareness
Yes.
training piece, and the fact that we do have human error and sound judgment, which are designed to be sort of the angel and the devil on your shoulder as you, the end user, are making your way through your day. I'll extend your compliments to the team. I actually work with them quite a bit. We work on scripts together. But the point around humor is not lost on the industry as a whole, because again, going back to the way in which this sort of training had been previously done, if it wasn't long or arduous or relatively boring before, it also came with some attitude. And the attitude was, unfortunately, one of where IT operations or even security operations were thinking of us, the end user, effectively as the human firewall, right? That attitude has changed. That attitude has changed to one more of partnership. I don't know. There's a nuance there that I think is to the benefit of all of us long term when it comes to cybersecurity enablement. Where this notion of microlearning, this notion of using humor, this notion of making people feel they're included in their cybersecurity actually does go a long way.
It does. It helps me understand my role and what role I can play in the organization to minimize that. So, the other topic that, you can't get away from is it is a scary topic. And every time you open up the news and you're looking at, just even a recent attack or ransomware discussion, and ransomware continues to be top of mind. It's evolving. It's always in the news. What are your thoughts on ransomware, Tom?
Well, I don't know if we have enough time for all of my thoughts on ransomware. Ransomware, I mean, I've been in cybersecurity for over 20 years, and when ransomware first emerged, it felt very similar to some of the early computer viruses and malicious code that we had seen. Highly disruptive, enormously costly, but we were able to, was able to stop a particular virus. One eventually was able to reverse engineer it and understand, how this malicious code is working such that we could build defenses that it would never happen again. And so as a result, we closed the book on certain forms of malicious attacks. Ransomware, the book is not closing. The book will not stay closed. This one is tough. And obviously, the State of Email Security Report was looking at, the survey was done prior to some of the more recent, very news-focused attacks that we've seen, obviously here in North America for JBL and then Colonial Pipeline, both of which were, without going down a story of attribution, who did it, we believe to be in large part nation-state attacks. Nation-state attacks are obviously an entirely different degree of sophistication over the majority of stuff, for example, that we at Mimecast see on a daily basis. So ransomware as a whole obviously is gaining not only gobbling up the news cycle, but it's also now ransomware is moving to the boardroom. Hopefully not. Hopefully your boards are not going to be infected with ransomware, but the discussion regarding ransomware has moved to the boardroom. It's moved now to a level that it has not had before. In terms of awareness, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say it's moving there because there now needs to be a larger budget and a larger understanding of the risk and impact. And it, like you said, it's not a matter of most likely will never happen. It's if and when this happens, what am I equipped and how am I equipped to respond? And, and unfortunately, we recently were in another meeting in regards to in a medical vertical discussion on, hey, they had talked with us about a year ago and it just wasn't in the budget. And they did have an attack, and sadly to say, this was in the millions that they ended up paying, and they publicly said So you can imagine the kind of conversation we're having today in the budget and the discussion. So, it's common to hear a lot of other businesses that are saying, I don't want to open myself up to be an easy victim for additional attacks, so I'm not paying. And, then you have other ones that we're having to pay, and we're you're hearing it more. So I don't know if there is a right approach, or do you have any tips to help businesses can
Yeah.
stay safe? Or
Well, I mean, so it's easy to say this from my position. That is, if you get hit with ransomware, don't pay the ransom. That's easy for me to say. I'm not sitting in the shoes of the people that need to make these critical decisions that keep businesses alive on a day-to-day basis. But the general rule, of course, is not to pay the ransom. And here's why. What we have seen over the course of the last year is ransomware V1 was very much sort of an opportunistic sort of spray and pray. I'm going to send this ransom document or malicious document to a bunch of people, and hopefully somebody double clicks on it, right? We move, and then you get encrypted, you follow the directions, you end up buying Bitcoin, you pay that off, you get sent the decryption key, you're back up and running. That was sort of the honest criminal's approach to that sort of economic relationship. The reality now is that over the course of the last year, we've seen the two-prong as well as a three-prong hit with ransomware. So one, pay to get your data back. Two, because the data we pulled off, we made a copy of it and it has a whole bunch of your customer information. We're going to release that to the dark web. So that's another Bitcoin right there. Oh, and then the third one is, because we have all this information about, you picked a medical example, we have information about all the patients that you have. We're going to reach out to them individually and let them know that we're going to tell their employer that they've got this medical condition unless they pay us a ransom. So it ends up becoming this incredibly distributed mess as, here you are in the hot seat, making a decision to, we need to get our data center back up and running. As a result, let's just pay this off. The repercussions of that can be many-fold. Other things that have populated over the course of the last year has been the notion of cyber insurance. So cyber insurance is not a new thing, but over the course of the last year, with the rise in the ransomware attacks, you're ending up seeing cyber insurance providers that are striking their ransomware payout or premium. We saw this with a very large insurer in North America that stopped insuring for ransomware, and within 2 days, that insurer got hit with ransomware. Why? Because if you're an adversary, if you're a malicious actor, you want cyber insurance covering everybody desperately, because then it's a no-brainer exercise to pay the money because our insurance is going to cover it. So it's a fascinating discussion. What, of course, and we don't have the time for it now, we should move on, but the other thing that is going to play, and we're starting to see play a significant role, is the role of government intervention. So the public sector moving into private.
Well, great topics, and I don't know what's the right answer for that organization. I just hope no one has to face that. That's not a place I'd like to be, unfortunately. So with that, and we know COVID is continuing and bad actors are going to continue. How do you advise organizations to create effective, holistic, cyber resilient strategies, if we can even call that? Are there trends that maybe we should be looking at for over the next year?
Yeah, good. Yeah, I mean, look, as an industry, and I've worked at many different companies in the cybersecurity space, as a whole, we have built products for our customers along one of two lines. One is we're going to be a best of breed solution. So Mimecast, for example, email security and what we offer there in our secure email gateway represents, and it has been validated by third party as a best of breed solution for email security. Another approach that a vendor can take, of course, is a best of suite approach, where we have lots of products and we're going to build a single console. And oftentimes you find smaller organizations that have less staff, less sophistication, less budget. They go for a best of suite. What we're seeing now, or one of the lessons learned post-COVID around this notion of cyber resiliency, is that while one should still leverage in their purchasing exercise determine if best of breed or best of suite is important to you. But more importantly, now I believe there's a best of ecosystem discussion that needs to be had. So what do I mean by that? Through COVID and through the lockdown, and now of course through these escalations in attacks, ransomware being just one example, as an industry, we're recognizing more so than ever before the value of our swim lanes, and yet the value of being integrated across the whole. So as an example, Mimecast, we integrate at a deep level in a bidirectional API with the likes of a CrowdStrike, a Netscope, a SIM, a SOAR, ITSM, all of the other investments that organizations have already made within their infrastructure. For us to be able to plug into our security peers, our security counterparts, we end up creating a mesh or a fabric that allows for better, more intelligent security. So that would be my one takeaway, is to look for solutions in-house that have a strong integration with their peers in other swim lanes within cyber.
Well, that's a great ending and a great transition into my other slide anyways. Thank you, Tom, because you guys are a key partner for us, and that is a key initiative swim lane for our email security approach. But again, email security is just one piece, and we do need to secure access for all of our services like web security and managed firewalls, monitoring, backup, network security, and so on. And so Cox Business, we provide secure access to applications anywhere, anytime, any device, but really it's the top of mind as we go and we talk to more businesses, small, medium, large. There is nothing else that is on their that's rising to the top as fast as I can see it as security, and obviously the pandemic has accelerated that. Going into the next slide, this is just a little bit of an overview on Cox Business, Rapid Scale, and Cox Cloud Solutions. So for those that are joining us, Cox Business is definitely how you know us, and with 120 plus years of technology and being around the business with over 6 million customers and 8 million active devices, we were listening to our customers and what they needed, and really sitting down across from them and listening to some of these challenges that were coming up over and over again, taking those back and going, we're a trusted provider, we're a trusted business partner, we need to figure out how can we help with these solutions. And so with that, we acquired Rapid Scale and that managed cloud services that the customers were really asking for. And then together, that kind of makes that Cox Cloud Solutions, which with that, we have a really highly agile approach to the market, being able to solve solutions that might be unique to that business with a very strong financial backing and a customer focus that is really our differentiator in the market. So Mimecast is part of that. We're super excited to have them as that partner because they align with that same customer focus and differentiator in the market. And then, just a list of all of our managed cloud services, and really, most people that are on this call, they know that this is that next level of IT productivity and profitability, that's going to help you with those unique challenges that you're faced today. But why we hope you choose us to venture forth in this is, this is a scary time, and there's a lot of things that are out there, and no one is as skilled and knowledgeable on every single part of that network, web security, Mimecast, email, ransomware, backup, everything. And so with that, we have the expertise in-house to partner. We pull in expertise like Mimecast. We use a consultative approach to that strategy implementation, and we're really committed to the people side of technology. You get to see us. This isn't just a go online web, information, and, it's a person across from you. But I would say just the key to, what we are most proud of and what I want to leave you with, and before we go into QA, is, our high customer satisfaction scores in this area. And, we get feedback on every single ticket, and we have one of the highest customer satisfaction scores in the industry. And that's really what we take pride in, and where we, from a Compass, make sure that we're going in the right direction. So we look forward to including you in that mix, and want to thank you again for spending the afternoon with us, and Tom, to learn more about how we can help your business challenges. But Summer, let's go ahead and see if there's any questions in Q&A from our audience.
Yes, can you hear me all right?
We can.
Perfect. Yes, we do have a few that have come in, and good thing we have time. So we'll start with this one. I'm hearing more about the importance of DNS protection and an increase in DNS attacks. Are these something you are seeing more of, and what are your recommendations for protection there?
So a good question. I would agree with it. There is more DNS attacks. So effectively, network security is where so again, to come back to this sort of notion of swim lanes, DNS, or distributed network, ends up being more on the network side of the house. And there's a bunch of new solutions, obviously, as network as a service is coming on, virtual network instances. There's new security that's happening there. What I can tell you this, well, we did talk about ransomware, and the traditional trend to get a ransomized or a malicious document to you would be either as an attachment in an email, or it could be across Slack or Jabber or what used to be Skype. But the more sophisticated attacks, frankly, are not coming in through email. They're largely coming in through, in some instances, some brute force. It could be the printer in your organization that's constantly like pinging. So we're ending up seeing these hands-on keyboard attacks that are different. It's related to DNS security. It's related to the instances of breaches that we're seeing there as well.
Great. Next up, are small businesses at as much risk as larger companies when it comes to ransomware or other attacks?
Yeah, I mean, this question seems to come up a lot, and at first I was like, oh, okay, this is just someone who's curious about whether ransomware is hitting small business or business or enterprise, and digging on this a little bit, you end up finding that it's like, well, we're a smaller business, so we're going to assume that we're not going to get hit. The reality is that organizations of all sizes are getting hit by ransomware. The really sophisticated ones, for example, the one I just mentioned, where it's actually not coming in through email. They're actually breaking into the network in other ways, and they're leveraging privilege escalation and lateral movement in order to infect an organization. The majority of us will not see attacks like that. Those are highly sophisticated. However, the basic sort of spray and pray approach, the opportunistic hacker does not care about your size. All they are interested in is outcomes for themselves, and anyone is just as viable as anyone else. Good question, though.
Yeah, we have a couple more so far. What benefits does an MSP offer around email security or security in general versus other providers?
It's a good question. And Terry, I'm keen. I mean, obviously, you just talked about the managed services that Cox is able to provide. As a whole, we have seen an uptick in the course of the last year. And again, with the rise in very sophisticated attacks hitting very large organizations. So that level of sophistication has resulted in a variety of different responses across the board. I think that in most instances, organizations at the beginning have been trying to weather this on their own. they're recognizing, as I talked about in this session, we talked about like the rise of new tools or channels, and you end up seeing organizations that don't have the budget or their expertise, and they're turning to partners who can manage security on their behalf. In many cases, organizations have already been leveraging MSPs or MSSPs for security across the board, but we are seeing a rise in that. One area in particular that I am particularly interested in when it comes to a managed service is managed incident response. So here, and let's use a Mimecast example, an email example, email comes in as an end user, I'm like, I know Terry, but this doesn't look like Terry writing this to me. I'm going to go ahead and report this. I'm going to go ahead and flag this to be looked at. And then through a series of automation, and then eventually, if necessary, human eyes, one is able to do the incident response. We're starting to see that level of tier 1 incident response being outsourced, being provided, given to a managed service provider. And I think that's the right approach. I think that will help IT organizations, security organizations, in order to allow them to focus their people on the really nasty stuff and to put what might be nuisance stuff in a tier 1 camp. But frankly, your mileage varies. You end up seeing all sorts of different mixes in the case of MSP, but in general, yes, as an industry, we're all in favor.
Yeah, I think leveraging the expertise, right? There's so many different swim lanes. It's hard to be an expert in everything. So with going to a rapid scale, a Cox Cloud solution that has expertise across all those swim lanes, and then being that consultative to it, sitting down and really talking about your business end to end, not just one piece of it, so that again, you're not getting hit up in the printer because it didn't come through on email. And really wanting to make sure that we provide a plan. How can we help you from a security plan and also a support model? With Rapid Scale, we have 3 different types of support models. So it works for any different level, small to enterprise, and how you want to engage. And we really operate on a level of transparency. And I think that's key.
Cool.
Wonderful. Just a couple more, you guys. You mentioned that a lot of attacks start with the end user. What are the first steps you would take to secure or educate users when it comes to the various solutions you offer?
Right. So, I mean, security. So I was trying to think about the onboarding of a new employee into an organization. First and foremost, on day 1, when they get their laptop and everything else, and you're doing induction into the company, cybersecurity awareness training should factor into that welcome to the company and welcome to your first week. That ends up setting it sets a cadence and a rhythm that you from there just reinforce. I think that, again, coming back to the discussion around enablement, that the real learning, not just for cybersecurity, but I think for learning in general, I think this is reflective of our sort of YouTube mentality, is that we prefer these short, quick videos in order to get the information we're after. So being able to meet your, in this instance, your consumers, or to meet your employees where they stand with a style of learning that they appreciate and gravitate towards, I think becomes important. So get them in early, get them in often, I guess would be my guidance when it comes to training. Terry.
And then just be consistent with it and ongoing. And I really think that Mimecast is the golden nugget design out there, because it is an ongoing, every month type of new relevant type of topic. And the things that I hear that the admins really love is the ability to get data analytics out. I'm spending money on this, and I'm actually able to now show an ROI back to that boardroom, back to showing, hey, I'm able to educate those end users. We're seeing some incremental differences and change that have protected us. And so I think that is key as well.
Absolutely.
All right, and we will wrap up with this one, you guys.
Okay.
If we were compromised, what would be the first steps to take? How can we be prepared ahead of time to get our data back and make sure it doesn't happen again?
All right, well, that is perhaps another full hour discussion. It is a great question. Often, especially in the last 2 years or so, I've been asked by leaders of IT or security operations if they should have a ransomware disaster recovery plan. And my response has always been the same, saying, do you have a disaster recovery plan? And if so, a ransomware recovery plan, frankly, should be a chapter. The importance of being prepared can't be understated. What feels like we as defenders being in lockstep with the adversary is frankly no longer the case. In many instances, cybersecurity is a half step, if not a full step behind. So as a result, one needs to be prepared for the inevitable. Now, there's lots of tools out there that can help organizations get up and running. I mean, I frequently will refer to the National Institute of Science and Technology, NIST. NIST provides a cybersecurity framework that speaks to all aspects of an attack. It speaks to what to do during the beginning of what you suspect is an attack, and then points to all the things you need to do in order to restore. So obviously having a rich archive when it comes to email, having an archive that's offline, that's safe in the event that things go down, you can restore quickly. Again, in our case, in the case of Mimecast and email, in the event if you're leveraging G Suite or Microsoft 365 and it goes down, we have a continuity service so we can bring it back online immediately. There won't be a lag there. So I think that at the end of the day, preparedness is not an easy job, but it pays off really well. And then to have run books and plans in place that, you know, when you hit the big red button and the alarms start sounding, everyone knows what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, those are great pieces of advice, Tom, because I noticed it caught a lot of people off guard, right? We had plans, we think we had plans, but when that red button did get hit for some of the, you know, disaster recovery or work from home or what else is going to happen, a lot of businesses didn't really have it in an executable state, right? And we had pieces missing. And so at any level, from small to large to enterprise, and also varying different budgets, varying different degrees of risk, we're here to partner with you and support you at all different levels. And so please, if this is something that you'd like to talk about, please reach out to your Cox Managed Service, your Cox Business Representative. And just thank you so much for joining us today to learn more about email security and our other cloud managed services. We look forward to seeing you in our next CloudStream event. Hey, Tom, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye, guys.